This is Tara McGinnis, and this is Theatrical Makeup Design Interactive. Today's lesson is bruises, cuts, and burns. That is to say, the kind of thing that you do on stage when you need to go and have somebody with a black eye, or somebody with a split lip, or a cut, or vampire bites, or some other thing that you'd be likely to find in a normal drama. Not zombies, not undead people other than, vampires. Just more like everyday kinds of things that go wrong with people as compared to the supernatural thing. We're not talking exorcist spinning your head around, just things like bruises, cuts, and burns, broken noses, that thing. So, I'm going to show you a few simple tricks that you can use for these kinds of things. In an ideal universe, you would like to go and start many of these makeups with skin that doesn't have makeup on it already. This isn't always possible. You may be in a show where you have a full set of makeup and then you have to go off stage and quickly come and look as though you have been beaten up or that you've been cut or sliced or whatever, in which case you'll need to go and apply this over your makeup. However, be aware of the fact that nose wax and some of these other products do not stick quite as well if there's a layer of makeup underneath it. So only do that if you have to. Otherwise, what you're going to do is you're going to go and apply the cuts or anything that involves wax before you apply the rest of your makeup. Now, as I say, that's only true of the things that involve wax and sometimes latex. And you can get away with putting those on without taking your makeup off first, if you absolutely have to. But try not to if you can. Now, one of the simplest things has to do with your teeth. If you want to go and have it look as though a single tooth has been broken, there is a lovely product which is black tooth enamel, and you can use it cleaning off the moisture on your teeth. And it's an enamel that is like a fast drying and very very dark nail enamel. And we will wait for that to dry briefly. As you can see, it already looks as though that tooth is missing, and it's already pretty well dry. So that's the simplest way to go and get out a whole tooth completely and evenly. It's using this kind of enamel. However, a lot of times when you need to go and make teeth look like they've been messed with or something, what you want is actually something that's more raggedy, something that looks like, hi there, I'm a bum who lives on the street and does not go to the dentist regularly. And you just want to have it look kind of bad, as though there are little bits and pieces. Then what's really good is to use the plain old cheap black wax that you can buy around Halloween for $1. And you can, again, wipe your teeth clean and then apply bits of black in an irregular fashion. Clean it off in some spots, add it more thickly in others. To give somebody a look that is more like bits and pieces gone bad. So, now the wax doesn't hold on very well, which is why it's not that good for this kind of thing where you want to make it completely black. It wears off very quickly. However, it is non-toxic, so the fact that you're eating it is not going to kill you. But it's better for the sort of subtle things that have sections like that. Okay. dubious teeth. They also make both this kind of enamel and sometimes you can even find this kind of wax in other colors like brown and yellow and for other special effects, mostly of a natural type, where you're trying to have yellowed teeth from somebody who smokes too much, or brownish teeth from bad dental conditions. Usually for stage, you can get away with just doing bits in black. You don't need all the detail and color that you would need for film. The black actually reads better on stage, so that's the main ones we use. Now, if you want to suggest that the reason your teeth are so bad is somebody smacked you in the mouth and you want to have a split lip, there are certain things you can do to make a cut that don't involve any kind of wax or elaborate work, but just a certain amount of paint. One of the things you can do is you can take a reddish color and pull up a line like that. You make it wider at the bottom as though it's split through there. And then you take another brush with a highlighter color and you put the highlighter to either side of that. Now, if you had something like this, somebody smacked you in the mouth, you might also have, if it's split deeply enough, you'd have a little bit of black in the center, because there would be flesh coming apart at that point. But you'd also be likely to have different bits of bruising and unevenness with the color around the lips, as though there's blood from where you've been hit, and then puffiness to either side, much as you find on this part. So this looks like I've been smashed in the mouth. Now, if you want to make that look like somebody's been smashed in the mouth and it's a bit older, then you start using the colors that you use for bruising. So these, for instance, are colors in a bruise wheel, which is a wheel of colors that have the colors most likely to occur on a person's face if they start to do bruising. And so you can, the good thing about getting a bruise wheel is a bruise wheel sort of does your thinking for you as to which colors you need and how you do them. So for instance, bruises when they get older usually have quite a bit of yellow in them. And a bit of purple. And you can kind of, almost at random, daub this stuff. And come to the greenish. And the palest and puffiest, say, I'm going to use my highlighter actually here. Right here. A little bit of highlighter. As though that's swelling up. So, that makes it look like it's been about a day since somebody smacked me in the mouth. Not a very nice looking mouth. Most often when you need to do bruising, you need to do the most common of stage bruises, which is to say a black eye. Someone's supposed to look as though they've been punched in the eye, and so you have to do a kind of exaggerated version of what it looks like when someone's punched in the eye. Well, one of the first things that happens is you get a dark ring around the underside of the eye, and usually a dark ring on that area that goes under. So you get like an extra shadow in there. You get quite a bit of red right around the edges because it's inflamed. So you want to have that pretty close to the edge. Very often the eyelid has gone out and become very reddened. And usually either corner of the eye has a lot of red in it. Sometimes even do almost like a little eyeliner in red, lower part. Okay. Then this part, usually when somebody's smacking you, that gets the strongest possible whack. And so it tends to puff up and get rather huge. So you put bits of purple around that area. And then where the bones stick out here and here, you put some yellow, because the yellow tends to be where the spots are puffiest, sticking up. Then a nice unhealthy green around the edges of the yellow. And usually on the side of the nose that's been whacked, along with a little bit of red there, because that's likely to have gotten an abrasion in that spot. Same with any of the other areas that, if you just figure, okay, a fist is coming in contact with this part of my face. This is going to get hit, this is going to get hit, and this is going to get hit. And your eye, because it's very delicate, even though it doesn't get hit as strongly usually, will have a lot of stuff going on in it. In fact, if you were doing it for film, you would want to do something to fake bloodshot on your eye as well. We don't do that for stage, thank heavens. But if you take a stipple sponge, you can put little bits of the red into those spots, like an abrasion, as though this got scraped as it went by. And so those are pretty good ways for that to work. Oh, and that was surprising. A little more gray in there than I thought it was going to be. And a sort of grayish, greenish tinge around. As though the skin surrounding it has gotten a little bit poisoned and unhealthy looking from all the activity going on there. Now, if you were to go and assume somebody's really been beaten up, we've got this, how could somebody hit you here, and somehow miss your nose? You're going to get your nose broken. Well, for getting your nose broken, we have these wonderful things that are made for baby bottles. Now, baby bottles have these lovely little tips with a little hole in the center. And these prove to be very handy because you can go and take that tip and chop off a small piece of it. And because of that hole, you can still breathe through it when you do the rather disgusting thing of sticking it up your nostril. What this does, sorry, this is just gross, but you stick that up your nostril, adjust it so you can breathe, and it distends one side of your nose so that it pulls to one side. So I'm going to go and try and make this look like somebody's broken my nose. Obviously, this part has been made bigger physically by the nipple of the baby bottle thing. But I'm also going to go and do stuff to highlight and shadow the nose to make it look more irregular. Now, for this, I do want to put on some of my base, because that will eventually need to be blended into the rest of my makeup. So I'll put some of that in. And I'm even going to want to put a little bit of base on the underside of that. Then I will take highlighter and And take the highlighter and make the most of the fact that this side of my nose is now sticking out, courtesy of the baby bottle thing, so that it gets a lot of highlighter here and not very much over there. So it's pushing it more that way. Then a broken nose is always more interesting if one part of it's going one way and the other is going the other side. So this side is going to get highlighter over there. And then the highlighter is going to again travel up this way so that it has a sort of zigzag effect. As though this got broken and shifted that way, and then this got smashed and is swelling up. Now, I will take some shadow. Let's see if I can exaggerate that a little bit. Pulling that down in that direction. And putting shadow around the edge of this to make that extra highlight a little more pronounced. Now, another thing I could do is I can take some black and using a brush, I can also paint that dark color so that it's as though this nostril is kind of bumped up and open. And your nostrils just getting a little larger from having been whacked about. Then let's assume that this nostril, as on the side that got hurt, gets a little bit of red coming out. Much like here, so that there's like a cut in the nostril. Maybe even a cut up, like there. So that it's been really pretty well thwacked. Then, take another bit of highlighter and make sure that the sides to either side of those cuts show up. Now, almost all of this, except for the baby nipple, is done with paint. However, there are occasions when you want to go and do cuts and bruises and other things, burns and so on, that come out in 3 dimensions. So, when you do that, you want to use wax or latex or some sort of combination of the two. I'm going to show you a simple cut done using wax. And you take a little bit of nose and scar wax, and you're going to go and spread some of this over a section of skin. Now, this is where it really helps if you possibly can go and do it on bare skin. And if you have a tendency towards oily skin, it helps to clean the skin beforehand. I tend to have dry skin, so there's not so much of a problem with that. But now, you have this. As you can see, you can use it to make, if you put it on a portion of your face like here where it stretches, it can look just like a scar, simply having put a piece on it because it just lumps up the skin. However, you can also go and use it in a little bit more complicated manner by going and putting that in and then putting on your base over the top of it. And then grabbing a pin. What you do with the pin is you drag it through the wax, like so. And then you pull it apart just a little bit. What you get is you get an actual indent that's a dimensional part to a cut. Now, let me let that get loose a little. Hold the edges down a little more. Make it all lovely. Now, of course, you do a cut like that on stage and you don't paint it in addition. That's never going to read on stage. That might be good for film to look like a little tiny cut, but it's never going to read, even in a small theater, from, 6 feet or 8 feet away. So what you need to do is, just as before, you go and take a red color and put it in the center. If it's a very deep cut, you want to go and take even a little bit of black and put that in the center of the red so that it suggests that it's deeper. You can... Sorry. Where was I? You can put black in to go and make it seem deeper. You can then go and use your highlighter color again and put highlighter on either side. Oh dear, I'm losing bits of my scar. Good for you to see this. That way you know it doesn't always work perfect every time. You have to work with it. You put the highlighter to either side, and it makes it look as though that part's sticking up, the outer edges. Now, sometimes you want to go and have a cut where the cut's, say, gotten infected or it's gotten a little bit puffier, at which point you then go and take your happy stipple sponge, and a little bit more red or pink is a good one to do. You can put that around as though it's becoming inflamed. Now, this is like the color you might use if there was a burn along with the cut. This is a bit stronger than I wanted. And I'm going to lose a bit of that. So I want it to look pink and inflamed, but I don't want it to look as though I've got rouge on. So I'm losing some of that. But I'm keeping most of it right around the edge of there. Then I'm going to take my stipple sponge with this dark sort of purpley color. Have that go around the edge. Again, somewhat similar to a bruise, you may want to go and add a little bit of yellow. Like it's gotten puffy. And a little highlighter in the middle of those yellow puffy sections. In this case, connecting with the sides where you already put the highlighter. So it's looking like it sticks up and it's going over. Now, if you want it to suggest that it's also bleeding, very simple. You take stage blood and you apply the tiniest possible amount using your pin. You don't need a lot to make this work. Usually people apply too much, and it just ends up looking like a bad horror show. And you know that I almost never suggest you do anything subtle for stage makeup, so I must mean it for this. Just a little bit goes a long way. Subtlety is rarely your friend in stage makeup, but it's always your friend when it comes to dealing with stage blood on stage. Now, another thing you can go and do that is in terms of using wax to make cuts is you can make an old cut. Like, okay, I want to go and have a cut that was on the chin. It was from a previous time somebody beat me up. So I'm going to put on this wax, and then I'm going to put on my base over that. I'm going to blend it into the skin as much as I can. And on this one, because it's supposed to be an old one, I will take my pin again, and I will go and do a line, but this time I'm going to use the flat side of it. I just do a little bit of an indentation, not that much. See, a little bit of a cut, but not that much. Now, I want to go and put the tiniest possible amount of a red in it, and I'm going to use a milder red that I've got in this wheel. It's really almost a pink, so that it's as though that pink is a permanent discoloration that you've got from a scar, not something that's very new. And as usual, I want to use a little bit of highlighter. And now I take thread and I cut little bits of thread into short pieces like this. Probably even need to be shorter than that. And this is a slow, meticulous process, and we will probably jump forward through some of it. What you do is you lay the thread across the cut like so. The pin and shove the ends of the thread into the wax. And yes, this is something that you will be struggling with and that will not want to cooperate with you. It is a really difficult one to do. But I'll place each of them. I cleverly pre-cut pieces. I pre-cut some of them too long. Okay, now I've got each of those in place. I've sort of stuck them in the wax, but I now need to go use the pin to get the ends down and in there. So it looks like maybe a week before I got beaten up. I went to the doctor and I got all sewn up and then promptly got beaten up again. So now, imagine also on top of everything else, I've been stuck in a fire. So over here, we're going to go and I'm going to show you how to make burnt skin. Now, burnt skin, you can do a lot of different ways, but for me, the easiest one that I've found to do is you take a bit of nose wax and you put a thin coating of that nose wax in a sort of irregular fashion over the section of skin that you want to look burnt. Now, you can leave it at that, but I find it even more fun if one doesn't. and takes that uneven bit and then one goes and moves up to working with liquid latex. Now, liquid latex, the first thing I have to warn you about is lots of people have latex allergies, so not everyone can work with this. You need to know if somebody has a latex allergy before you slather their face with it and cause them to go into anaphylactic shock and have to go to the hospital. So please ask questions like that before you go and use latex. Latex has a tendency to stick into brushes and destroy brushes. One of the things that you can do is between layers of latex, if you stick your brush in water, it makes it easier to get the stuff out of the brush. Also, if you can, when you are done with your brushes, as soon as possible, clean them. And other things that you can do, you can put a little soap in the brush to begin with to make it easier to have the latex come out. And if all else fails and it just is sticking in your brush and ruining your brush, you take a fine wire brush, the thing that is used for peeling paint off of your house that's looks sort of like a giant brass toothbrush. You take that and you run the hairs of the brush through the brass bristles of the wire brush. And that will almost always get the latex out, even if somebody was stupid and didn't wash the brush and let the whole thing get hard. But I'm not going to be stupid. I'm going to stick it in here right away. And now we're going to watch latex dry. Or rather, we're not. Wow, it's magic. It's video. It's dry already. So, you take your latex and you dutifully cover it in your base so that it looks as close as possible to normal skin. I then take reddish colors, such as those. This is a burn wheel. And you take some of those red colors, particularly the dark ones, and stipple a bit on the surface. And it is easier to stipple the surface before the main event that I'm about to do to impress you all. And after, a couple of bits of red happening there. And then the parts that stick up the highest are going to get a little bit of gray in them. Now, the fun thing with the latex is I can take the latex and peel. And because I put the wax underneath, it gives it a little more dimension. And it comes off a little easier. So we have torn flesh. And where that torn flesh is, we go and take again our reddish colors and we paint the inside where the torn flesh is red. We use lots of different reds, because a burn is never all one even color. And we use a little bit of black in the dark corners so that it tends to have black around the edge and red in the middle and the brightest pink in the center. And then in a little ring around that where it's coming up, I want to have some spots that are in dark colors of red. And finally, we want to go and take our highlighter yet again and make sure that the highlight catches the loose skin. So you have a dark ring with red and then pink in the very center. Then around that you have your base and sort of off-white, creamy, or whatever is a highlighter for your skin tone color around that, and then followed by another ring of pink, but irregular. So, very good burnt skin. Oh, I've been having a really bad day. Now, this is a pretty good panoply of all the kinds of things that are likely to be on-stage injuries. If you ever wanted to go and do yourself a simple zombie movie, chances are you could, with a combination of these things, come up with fairly decent zombies. Something like that. But the most likely use for a lot of these things is actually in productions of Dracula and other things of classic horror. And one of the things I think I should show everybody is how to go and do neat little vampire bites. In order to do vampire bites, you can do them two ways. You can do them with paint, or you can do them with paint and wax. I tend to prefer you just try paint, because the wax has a tendency to pop off at awkward moments. And it's just like so distracting during a production of Dracula. Lucy is writhing there, being, I've just been bitten, and I'm just so excited about it. And then her little bites pop off. It ruins the mood. So paint is really a good idea. And the advantage to paint, of course, is it's easy to put on over the existing makeup. So you have your existing base, and then you put a little red dot with another little red dot in seemingly logical progression. Then in the center of that dot, you put a small black dot, and then around that, you use your highlighter again, as though it's gotten puffy. And then I'm blending that right there. And then you take a little bit of pink around that. And a partial ring. So it looks like it's standing up. Now this won't pop off in a hurry, and this works really well for stage purposes. It also has the advantage of you can put it on over makeup, so somebody can go off stage, they're bitten by a vampire, and a few minutes later they're back on stage with this. Very fast. However, there are occasions when you've got people up close, you've got directors who want dimensional bites, you've got short student films that you're having to do stuff for, and you can need to go and do it in dimensions. So for that, what you do is you don't put makeup on first, or you clean your makeup off in those spots, and you take tiny little lumps of wax, and you take those tiny little lumps and make them into little balls, and you place those on the neck, and then blend the edges down into the neck so that it sticks as best you can get them to stick. So they look like a couple of overly active pimples. Okay, you take your overly active pimples and you take your base, put that over them, around them. Then you take the sharp end of a brush and you poke a hole into them, twirling slightly, trying not to get your brush stuck. You can also do this with a large pencil point. You usually want to have a hole that's a bit bigger than you think you need, because it needs to be exaggerated. And as you can see, this by itself is not going to go and do anywhere near as much as this does. So what you have to do now is take all this and paint it precisely the same way you did on this side. So we're going to take our red and put it inside here. And inside here. Hold on, I'm going to stop while I have a coughing fit. Then you're going to take your black and do the darkest part of the hole, center. Then take your highlighter again and do little white rings around the vampire bites. And then finally you use a little bit of rosy red. Around that. Too much red, yet again. So you can see that's pretty good looking and stays on fairly well. It just, as I say, for stage purposes, there is a really bad audience reaction you get with one of these things goes blink. So I tend for stage to prefer this. If you're doing bite marks, chances are you're doing production of Dracula. Now, Dracula has a number of special effects depending on the production, and one of them that you will find in a number of play versions is what I call the sacred wafer trick. That is to say, the sacred wafer, where Dr. Van Helsing, who always has a heavy European accent and therefore pronounces wafer, takes a consecrated host, a holy host, a sacred wafer, and applies it to the forehead of either Lucy or Mina, depending on your production. Whichever hot babe is been bitten by Dracula, because he's going to bless her in order to purify her and make sure that Dracula keeps away. And so he blesses her with the Holy Host, but she has already been bitten by Dracula. And as a consequence, she shrieks and screams and grabs her forehead and finds that there's a burn mark where the sacred wafer has been. Now, there are two ways to do this. There's a nice simple way that you can do if you have a person playing Van Helsing who is very much on the ball. What you do is you take a nice little white disc that looks like it could be a holy host, a sacred wafer, and then on the other side you put just a little bit of sponge and a whole bunch of reddish makeup. And he goes and takes and applies it, and sure enough, it puts a red mark on the forehead that looks something like a burn. That's usually not too bad. The problem is, of course, that you have to get it absolutely right into the forehead, and he has to not flip that, and he can't, drop it and end up... There are many things that can be wrong with that, but it is actually the simplest way of doing the trick. As long as you have a Van Helsing who's really bright and can handle strange little props like that without, dropping them on stage so where it shows how the trick was done, you can probably do that. If, however, you would like to do something a little bit fancier and more impressive, there is another way you can go and do the same trick. And that's the one I'm going to show you. What you do is you start by going and putting red makeup in the center of Mina's forehead. Much like the red you have here, you're going to want to go and put a darker color on the outer part, possibly even some black. Graying this area. And a highlighter in the center that's more of a pinky color, so that when it is revealed, it has an uneven color like this same burn mark. Then you go and can do several things to make it less sticky. One of which is you can take either Vaseline or Vaseline Intensive Care Lotion or any other thing that is in the range of the greasy and gooey. And you put some greasy and gooey on that. Now I'm going to take the greasy and gooey off my fingers. Then you take a square of toilet tissue, which you have peeled down to a single layer, and you cut yourself a circle. Approximately the same size as your makeup. You press it into the goo. And into the skin. And then you take a little more goo. Blend that over it. Oh boy, it's trying to tear. So I have to put a little extra piece. You don't want to put too much of the paper though, or when you're putting latex over this, it's going to look too lumpy. You want to go and have stuff on here that makes it so that the latex ultimately doesn't stick to the center part of the forehead very well. So, you then take latex and a brush for this. You paint thin, even, very smooth layers over this. No lumps, no bumps, perfectly smooth. And let that dry. A second layer, also done very smoothly. Now I'm going to apply a third layer. While the second layer was drying, just like I predicted, one of the bite marks fell off. Just so you know. It's true. The bites have a tendency to pop off when they're out of wax. Wax just doesn't stick well to the neck. Third and last coat. Okay, now the third coat has dried. Once the third coat has dried, you go and take a little bit of highlighter and put highlight over the dark spot. Then you take your base color and put it over that, trying to, as much as possible, blend the whole thing into the forehead seamlessly so that it looks like it's just a plain, ordinary, happy, normal forehead. Try not to rub across this part. Pat it down, lest you peel it off before it's supposed to be peeled off. Watch as Van Helsing is blessing dear Miss Mina with forehead. Goes and pushes it on there. She grabs this. In actual fact, she doesn't grab that at all. He pulls it away, or you can grab it, but then you have to figure out how you palm it. He pulls it away, she screams, and she grabs a portion of her forehead and goes, "Ah!" And you pull away the latex, and underneath you see this. And usually, if your writer has a particle of sense, very shortly thereafter, the scene ends. And so you get this effect, this quick thing. And then she has a chance to go off and make it look even worse before her next scene. So she can go and peel it up and away a little bit so that there's little bits of fleshy stuff hanging down. And you can go and do a bit more, where you take more of the red, put it in, and more of the dull red, put it in. And above all, taking the brown, putting brown just underneath the edges. And a little highlighter on the outer edges. Same as you do over here. So that by the next act, you have something that looks like this. But the first time you see it, all you see is suddenly there's this red on her forehead. So that is the sacred Wafer trick. If you want to go and do things like this and this, but even more extreme, like as in horror movie makeup or wandering around doing zombies, there are lots and lots of videos that specialize in that one particular thing. You can find many of them on Amazon.com, on eBay, and elsewhere on the net. You can go and get specialized videos by people who do horror movie makeup full-time and who will show you dozens and dozens of additional tricks to the ones that I've shown you here. My personal favorite is Monster Makeup by Dick Smith, which is a 30-minute video with an accompanying book. And the reason it's my favorite is, apart from the fact that it's only 30 minutes and therefore not irritating to watch, not very well cut and put together, but the book explains a lot of the tricks that they use, and particularly a lot of tricks that older movies used before they had access to latex. So about half the makeups in this book can be done not with any kind of specialized makeup supplies, but with things that you'd find in your kitchen, like Caro syrup and flour and breadcrumbs and paper towels and toilet paper and tea and all the kinds of things that a normal person has in their household, so you don't have to go and get specialized products or things that have potentials to make you allergic, but just things that are normal food products available pretty much anywhere. They're designed so that they have makeups that are fairly advanced, and then ones that are somewhat more simplified for people who want to go and do horror movie type makeup for children at Halloween. And that's what this book manages to combine, both the simple stuff and the complicated stuff in a very easy to follow format that uses lots of ordinary household products to achieve really complex, wonderful effects.